Now, Iowa Congressman Rod Blum really hates it when people come to his town halls that aren't part of his district. See, Republicans seem to be having a problem with people who are outside of their district coming to the town halls to essentially yell at them over health care. Now, he was so mad that he decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start pre-screening the people that come into my town halls to make sure no one from the outside comes to my insider town hall. I don't want anything from the outside. No people from the outside, nothing. Really? Nothing. Okay, well, that's interesting. Now, journalism at the local level, I'm happy to say, isn't quite as dead as it is nationally. So when there was an investigative reporter from Iowa's local KCRG TV 9 came in, asked him about some questions about this little pre-screening on his town halls, well, things actually went downhill rather quickly. Let's take a look at that.
I think some would make the case that you represent all Iowans. The decisions that you make impact all Iowans. So shouldn't all Iowans have a voice at the table, or at least have the option to?
I don't represent all Iowans. I represent the first district of Iowa. That'd be like saying, shouldn't I be able to, even though I live in Dubuque, go vote in Iowa City during the election because I'd like to vote in that district instead.
Would you still take donations from a Republican in Iowa City? We haven't even. We just.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
He's
going to sit here and just badger me.
All right.
We just asked why you wanted to do the interview. That was it. Congressman, come on. Take a seat. Congressman, I insist. Let's talk about.
Take donations from. Wow.
Now, look, the reporter's name was Josh Scheinblum, right? And he actually did a pretty good job here. And look, again, this Blum, he didn't want to answer the question, probably because he does take outside money. Actually, he does take outside money. I'm going to tell you how much. And most politicians do. Now, they don't like to admit that they take this outside money because it's super unpopular, right? I mean, you know, in local politics, when you hear that your local politician is taking money from, say, another city or another state, or these big super PACs or whatever, they get kind of mad. Turns out that your local constituents don't like you taking outside money from giant special interests and corporations. Funny how that works, right? It's super funny how that works. And like, it's super hypocritical in his case. Now, the interesting thing here is, you know how money's considered speech, right? So he's basically there refusing to condemn the idea that wealthy donors from outside of his districts have more of a right to speak to him, but regular Iowans from outside of his district do not have the right to speak to him. But it matters in what kind of speech it is. If you're there to yell at him about health care, we don't want you in here. But if you're there to give me money, speak to me with dollar bills, well, I like that kind of speech. And I want you here, and I just want to take your money. It's follow the money. And in this case, all that money is coming, or a lot of money is coming out from outside the district. In fact, according to the Washington Post, who reported on this, and the Federal Election Commission data, and the Center for Responsive Politics, Blum has raised more than $1.8 million during his 2016 re-election campaign. His top two donors happen to be out-of-state entities. A PAC controlled by Representative Mark Meadows, chairman of the House Freedom Caucus and the Conservative Club for Growth, and his next three most generous donors were Iowa-based companies. Now, it gets kind of worse for Blum after this. After this little interview, he went to a town hall where a constituent asked him whether he would decline to take out-of-district campaign donations if he's barring out-of-district Iowans from attending his town halls. Here's his response. You'll love this. This is an official event as a congressman. This isn't a political event. So when we're talking about contributions coming from outside the district, that's a political thing. Well, that's convenient, right? That's super convenient. Basically, he doesn't want to talk about how his top donors were from out of state, because that's a political thing. Excuses on excuses, man. That is a way to dodge those questions there, asshole. What do you think about this whole situation?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things going on here, and the one prominent thing is that this is an ongoing trend of a lot of politicians, especially Republicans, but even a lot of corporate Democrats too, are really scared of their town halls now. they're scared of their town halls, and it's because we've gotten so far away from what the public wants. I mean, people are even saying like, well, maybe the Trump administration will keep Obamacare if we give them the wall. Like, how is that a compromise in a supposed democracy? Hey, we'll let you have this really unpopular thing that nobody wants if you let us keep this really popular thing that a lot of people want that you want to take away. That's stupid. In a democratic process, you get to keep the thing that most people want and improve on it, which, by the way, improvement means divert to a nonprofit single-payer system, and you don't get this wall because it's a total waste of resources. We don't even know exactly how much it's going to cost, and it's a bullshit racist idea. End of story. End of story. And people are coming to town halls now, and they're pissed off, and reasonably so. There was just a town hall here in California, where Dianne Feinstein, who is a corporate Democrat that needs to go, that is holding up this state, and in a sense is holding up the country, where she used a right-wing talking point to talk against universal health care. They asked her, they were just like, well, what do you think of single payer? And she goes, well, if that's a total government takeover of health care, I'm not there. A right-wing talking point. And then, of course, we found out a couple weeks prior she had a big fundraising event with a bunch of folks from the pharmaceutical industry. Surprise, surprise. And people booed her. And now you go on her website, you're not going to see anything about town halls listed. Marco Rubio lied and said he was out of the country when he wasn't. I mean, the list goes on and on. We're living in a true plutocracy now, where the powerful are scared of the people. The powerful aren't scared of the media, at least the corporate media. Yeah. And, the game is rigged. And I don't know if it's always been as rigged as it is right now. I really don't know, because it's hard for me to say, like, well, maybe when I was in college or whatever, I was more idealistic than I am today, which is true. So maybe the game's always been this rigged. But I don't think it has been. I don't think that we've had a Democratic Party that's this neoliberal and corporate and this disconnected. 80% of Democrats favor Bernie Sanders. He's the most popular politician in the country. Second most popular politician, Elizabeth Warren. Two progressives are the most popular politicians in the country. They're both in the Democratic Party, at least by definition. Yeah. And they're both being stifled by the powers that be within that party. That's not a fair process, nor is that a process of an organization that wants to win. And over on the Republican side, you just have them going further and further to the right, which should be expected at this point, because they're a parody of themselves, and that's part of the reason we have Trump. But they're so disconnected from public opinion. They're so disconnected from the status quo that the reason Trump rose to the top is because he was the quote-unquote outsider. Well, turns out that was just snake oil. He's an insider. So now you have these town halls where everybody is pissed off because neither side of the aisle is pleasing anybody. I mean, there is such a steep disconnect between public opinion and the needs of a populace and what the powers that be are doing. So, of course, now you have people trying to scrutinize who comes to their town halls. It's another symptom of a tragically broken system.
Yeah, even insider Democrats, to touch on an earlier point, are deeply, deeply unpopular. I mean, you have, for example, Hillary Clinton, who has a 35% approval rating. That's even less than Donald Trump, by the way. How bad do you have to be to have a lower approval rating than Donald Trump? Congress as a whole is what? In the teens? Maybe the low 20s?
It was in the single digits at one point, I believe.
It was. It was bad.
Yeah.
And this was not because it was under Republican rule, too. This was during the Democrats, when Democrats had control of the Senate and Republicans had control of the House. Now it's under Republican control, and, well, it's not really all that much higher, but nonetheless, you have basically establishment on both sides that is deeply, deeply unpopular. And when you run on, populist ideas, whether you're Dave Bratt running against the banks, if you can remember that guy, who, again, was a snake oil salesman, he's not really against the banks, but he ran against the banks in a super conservative district. He won. He ousted Eric Cantor. And now you have, populist Democrats that are coming up, progressives that are coming up, that are challenging some of these corporatist Democrats. And look, we're seeing that. We've got challengers now for, what is it, Joe Manchin? Kyle Kulinski recently presented a new challenger against Joe Manchin. I talked about challenger to Nancy Pelosi yesterday on the show. And pretty soon there's going to be a primary challenge for Claire McCaskill and well, there actually is for Claire McCaskill and Dianne Feinstein. So all these corporate Democrats, they're going to find out what a real primary is like, because they have not had one in a very, very long time, at least not one that was competitive. But people in California especially are becoming more and more politically engaged, more politically active, and they see the corporate Democrats for what they are, as not representing them, but representing the special interests, and they don't want that anymore.
Yeah, we're actually going to be talking to Nancy Pelosi's challenger today on the Jimmy Dore show. Yeah, we're going to be talking, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say and to learn more about the candidacy. I mean, I think it goes without saying I'm going to, it's a progressive running against Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. It goes without saying I'm going to vote for the guy, but I'm
he's
still
got some
really
interesting.
He's got some good
in hearing. He's got some good positions. The guy's, what is it, Stephen A. Jaffe or Jaff?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether to say his last name, but I noticed
I believe it's Jaffe, but I could be wrong on that too.
Yeah,
but I believe it's Jaffe.
Medicare for all. So he says, I'm in favor of universal health care. I'm against Nancy Pelosi and her taking all this giant, this money from giant corporations and special interests. So, and of course, he's in favor of Fight for 15. So that's just one of the many examples of the corporate Democrats being challenged. And it goes back to how people are getting engaged. And the original point of these town halls is showing how angry people are. And now it's good to see that a lot of people are now taking this anger and turning it into political activism. And that's really what it should be about. I mean, it's not just enough to get angry. And like, you have some of these members of the, so-called resistance that are mostly the, centrist Democrats, right? That will go out and they'll do a few protests here and there, but then they're not actually doing anything because they actually prefer the status quo. And then you have the progressives out there that are actually also going out there and protesting, but then in addition to protesting, they're actually putting up candidates and they're actually supporting candidates and they're actually trying to make some positive change. So it's not the faux resistance. It's an actual, as Nomiki Khan said before, we don't need a resistance. We need a revolution. And that's the only way things are ever going to really change.
Well, Jeff, in fairness here, Hillary Clinton started her group Onward Together, and which is a message to moderate Republicans, by the way. But just by starting that group, she's already saved a ton of jobs for Republicans in Congress in 2018. But nonetheless, lot of jobs, a lot of those seats might be safe now.
Are you saying she is not a good resistance fighter?
No, I'm saying that I wish she would just develop a new affinity for hiking and go back to the woods and stay there.
Oh no, you know what? She is actually a good resistance figure. You know why? She is what we're resisting against. She is galvanizing resistance against her.
She's resisting accountability. That's what she's resisting. That's why when she's in the press, she once again blames everybody except for herself and her campaign. She blames everybody else. Even Jake Tapper called her out on it. And you know what? Hillary Clinton is not an activist. You know what Hillary Clinton does? Hillary Clinton makes activists. There are anti-fracking activists because of Hillary Clinton. There are anti-war activists because of Hillary Clinton. There are anti-for-profit prison activists because of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is not an activist. Hillary Clinton makes activists, and not in the right way, not in the good way. She's not part of the resistance. Nope. She's what people are resisting.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYT Nation.